Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to compare the latest released characters in Genshin's story as to how they obtained their visions with their counterpart Sephiroth in the Tree of Life. So in case anyone was wondering if I alter the claims I made about Genshin's visions and Gnosticism, let's find out because I already put forth how each vision is obtained. So newer characters will either prove or disprove what I already put forth. So today we'll be covering Mika, Kaveh, Baizhu, and Kirara. So let's start with Dendro. As I've said in my first video of this series, the key to unlocking Dendro is honest self-sacrifice. But you also need to have your soul resonating with the right frequency. And the meaning behind that frequency are things like experience, the seed of an idea, as well as insight, inspiration, and intuition. This one is also spiritual, creative, and even transcendent. A side note is this one is supposed to be the purest form of manifestation because this one is supposed to be the first thing in the chain of creation, thus making it make sense why its archon is very wise and intuitive, yet an innocent child in appearance. Perhaps a bit of a spoiler here, but you can see Nahida's core instinct to self-sacrifice for others in her latest Archon quest. A compulsion that every single Dendro user will have and likely show if the situation arises. But you can look at my Dendro video if you want more context on how Dendro works, as I've already gone over it in the first video of the series. As well as if you wish to learn about the other character stories as to how they obtain their vision. So let's start with Kaveh. Kaveh is a renowned architect. However, this isn't his only artistic passion. He likes interior design, mechanics, and even storytelling. One of his really strong traits is he has extreme empathy for those around him, not just counting humans. For instance, in the Parade of Providence, you can see Kaveh sacrificing his own survival food to the little animals around him when he knows full well that, this is gonna cost him because this is just who he is. Kaveh actually has a lot of story that show his characteristics, but to not make this video too long, I'm gonna give you just the important details, the cliff notes of his characteristics to prove this is how his soul is resonating and this is why he obtained this vision. So when he was a small child, he actually lost his father, which he kind of blamed himself for, and his mother was struggling, so he took it upon himself to choose a certain career path and to make sure it succeeds in order to be successful one day and to be able to help support his mother. Another event that transpired is one time he was out with some of his classmates exploring some ruins, and there was a cave-in and his classmates could have died, but instead he chose to push them out the way, risking his own life in the process. Another important event was in the Parade of Providence in the battle for the glory of the crown. He teamed up with Farazan and he needed the money to win. He needed perhaps even the notability of this victory kind of thing to boost his career. But instead, only one of them could win even though they teamed up together. So he gave Farazan the victory instead of taking it for himself, even though he needed it and he wanted it desperately. He just couldn't. He was compelled to give her that round, to give her that victory. Perhaps the most notable event that shows Kaveh's true nature is when he actually won the Crown of Glory and he realized what it's all about. He sacrificed all of that wealth. He sacrificed everything in this moment because he understood what this crown was about, what this whole point of everything was about. And even though it would have made him extremely wealthy and get him out of debt and stuff and even able to afford his own place, he didn't want the next person after him to suffer. He didn't want that for anyone ever again. He knew what it meant, so he just sacrificed it all. Because this is his nature, self-sacrifice for the greater good of all of those around you, or perhaps everyone in general. This is his nature, this is his soul. So as everyone can clearly see, this is Kaveh's resonance, and he definitely is worthy of the Dendro vision. However, what was that key moment that gifted him a vision in the first place. So it actually was a while back, Kaveh was actually commissioned by Dori to build her an extravagant palace, but she gave him the artistic freedom to do it his way, however he wants to do it. The only detail she wanted was like, it has to be really big and really dramatic and extravagant kind of thing. And he's like, yes, I will do this. However, before it was even complete, the Withering destroyed at least a portion of the palace, and Dori just wanted to cut her losses and call it quits. However, Kaveh wanted to take responsibility. He needed this to be complete for her, so he actually took on the responsibility. He self-sacrificed his own house just to be able to afford this and go into massive debt to help cover her losses and to actually get it complete for her without him gaining anything in return. If anything, he went into debt because of this. But when he, sold his house and he went back home for, I guess, like one last meal before he has to basically be homeless, and the meal he ended up making wasn't even his favorite meal. It was his father's favorite meal, I believe, that he had shown him when he was a child. Anyway, Kaveh made this for some reason, perhaps one last memory about his family in his childhood home before it's gone, But in the very meal he made was where the vision materialized for him. This is why and how he obtained the Dendro vision. Not just making the meal, but sacrificing everything selflessly. So next is Baizhu. And Baizhu has a pretty complicated story, but I can simplify it, because the story is pretty much Changsheng's story. So Changsheng is the white snake, and what she does is she makes contract with specific humans, and what you do is you basically have that contract for the rest of your life. And what it does is, if you choose to, you will gain the ability to heal other people, to take their illnesses from them. However, what happens in return is you transfer it to yourself, or at least a portion of it, or perhaps even all of it if that's your choice. So you take on their suffering in order to cure them. So Baizhu choosing to take on this role for the rest of his life, to be able to cure other people, but taking on their illnesses himself. But not only that, it's that without Changsheng having a contract with somebody, she would eventually just keep getting weaker and die on her own, right? She'll wither into nothingness eventually. So he actually thought he would be saving her life as well if he makes a contract with her. So for these two reasons, to live this life forever, taking everyone else's illnesses but suffering for it, and also taking on the task itself, will save her life. These things is what granted him the Dendro vision. For some other people, perhaps they could get Hydro vision from doing the same action as well, because it is empathetic service towards others. But in Baiju's case, he resonates with Dendro, so doing this action, which is very similar to Hydro type action, he got a Dendro vision from it. But this isn't his complete story. This doesn't just wrap everything up. So when Baizhu was younger, his town was actually plagued and he lost his parents during this. However, his master, his teacher, was a doctor trying to combat this. And given enough time and enough research and enough experimentation, you can solve pretty much anything. You can cure pretty much any disease, any sickness. So they were able to contain this. However, there were already people lost, and there's nothing you can do to combat death, right? You can't cure death, which is a problem that him and his master and his master's master and so on, they all struggled with this, which is they just want to help people, they just want to cure people of everything, but they can't cure death. However, their ultimate pursuit is to try to cure death, to try to end it, to try to stop people from suffering from this. However, it's not really achievable, right? So there's a few things I want to say here off script. So when I first saw Baizhu and I was trying to figure him out before I knew his story, I just assumed because he's Dendro, he's empathetic, he saw Chi-Chi, he wanted to help her, he wanted to give her family, he wanted to raise her, he wanted to take care of her. That's just the Dendro mentality. You're basically sacrificing your life and becoming a parent because you want to better this person's life. That's what I was thinking. But Baizhu took this to another level, because theoretically what he's doing when he saw Chi-Chi, he doesn't just want to take care of her, he wants to cure her of being a zombie, of being undead. He wants to take that from her and bring her back to life. His first goal is to try to just find the way to cure it medically. But if he can't find the way, I know without a shadow of a doubt, he would take on her suffering himself. He would take on death and zombieism from her to give her life. I know he would do this because this is the Dendro way, self-sacrifice. But he's trying to not do this and trying to find an alternative way so he can continue to help everyone else as well as to try to cure death itself. himself so people don't have to suffer from it. But I think ultimately he's not gonna succeed in this, and it may just be that he ends up sacrificing himself to save Chi-Chi. And perhaps Chi-Chi takes on the role of taking on Chung-Chung, just because she's always passed down from master to students constantly. And then they take on the role from then on to healing others, to taking on the sicknesses and illnesses from others onto themselves. So she may actually take on a Dendro vision when this happens. If she chooses to do this, she would then be Dendro, right? Or perhaps Hydro. One last thing to note here with Baizhu and Chung-Chung is perhaps you may be wondering, is this actually a selfless act? Because perhaps your dog or your child or your parent or your grandparent is sick or is dying and you want to keep them in your life, so healing them or taking their suffering from them would be selfish, and you keep them for a longer amount of time. But doing this in itself, taking away their pain, their suffering, their illness, even perhaps their death, so they can live longer or so they can live period, or so they can be healthier, that is selfless because you're sacrificing yourself for them. It is still selfless and would definitely grant you a Dendro vision if you resonate with Dendro. Next is Kirara. She's a Nekomata, a yokai who started life as a cat till she gained the ability to transform into a human in appearance, which is also when she obtained her Dendro vision. She was a house cat of an old lady whom she calls Granny, whom cared for her seemingly like a child rather than a pet. So how exactly did she obtain her Dendro vision? So it started because of one snowy night where Kirara was woken by the fireplace because it was getting colder and colder, and as the last ember in the fireplace went out, she wondered, where did Granny go? She should have been back long ago. So she looked out the window and saw it was snowing, so much so that even the moonlight wasn't able to illuminate the land. Kirara jumped out the window into the freezing cold, feeling her paw temperature dropping as she walked in the snow. So much so that they started to ache. So in attempts to locate her granny, she climbed the house to try to get a better look around the land. However, everything was too dark to see, so she figured she'll climb the tallest tree in hopes that she would get a better look around. However, her little cat body struggled to climb this tree, which seemed endlessly tall in this freezing weather. However, she kept digging deeper and deeper into her will, with the memories of the time she spent with her granny and the stories she was told by her of humans and yokai as her fuel. She was constantly pushing as if she would lose these memories themselves if she was even to slow down, and so she kept speeding up. When she finally made it to the top, her breath was taken away as she saw the lights from the human city at night. In this moment, it was like something dormant in her heart was ignited, and all the stories Granny had told her about yokai and human now didn't seem so fantastical. They didn't seem so far away. Now they seemed obtainable and reality, and now she yearned to join that, to be a part of it all. And as all of this flood of emotion and thoughts was going through her mind, she spotted exactly what she was looking for, her granny in the distance. As she landed back on the ground, the moonlight shined down on her. She now had cast the shadow of Two Tails. She then started to make her way to her granny, who the moment the snowstorm had ended was ready to rush home to her kitty. However, Kirara had already trekked her way through the cold, through the snow to get to her, and now was standing before her in human form with two tails and a dendro vision. It might not seem like much of a sacrifice to some. However, Kirara did not only endure the cold for her granny, but in truth she could have died. But she wasn't thinking about any of this at all. She just didn't want to lose her memories she had shared with her, or this life. So she had now come to the age and maturity to be the one to take care of her granny, rather than the other way around. And this is why she obtained her dendro vision. Next, let's move on to cryo. So a quick summary of what cryo is all about. The resonance is supposed to be understanding, seeing things from a higher perspective, fleshing it out, formulating a story. It's supposed to be about form and limitation. It's supposed to be logical and analytical and organized. The key action or thought that it takes to actually unlock this vision, if you already resonate with this type of frequency, is simply joy, which may sound pretty silly to every other type of resonating soul. However, to cryo, they don't really have joy, at least not till they obtain their vision. Perhaps because of pain, or loss, or betrayal, or worry, or doubt, or some other means. However, knowing too much is more times than not a burden after all. And cryo, again, is about understanding. Next and finally, at least for now, is Mika. So Mika is a frontline scout and cartographer for the Knights of Favonius. He's a shy kid who delightfully fulfills all duties and tasks that come his way, with a seemingly inability to refuse, thus making him seem more like a Hydro user, as empathetic acts of service are their compulsion. However, since every other character seemingly has aligned with Gnosticism so far without error, I believe that Genshin must have not made a miscalculation here. So this must mean that Mika has a deeper understanding of things, so much so that he not only fully comprehends the situation, but the current trajectory of all those involved. And since he's very empathetic, this must leave him with a lot of grief. And to combat this, he must do everything within his power to alter their fates by manipulating whatever situation so that a better outcome will be reached for those involved, as only this will quell his worries and bring him relief. In other words, a touch of joy. A quick note is he treads very close to being Hydro or Dendro, but for the reasons behind his actions, his resonance is why he's Cryo. So how exactly did he obtain his vision? So what happened was, not long after he joined the reconnaissance company, he saw that the information on a certain area was no longer valid. So Mika took it upon himself to update these details in its terrain on his own. But doing so, he ended up in a life or death situation. He was discovered and attacked by foes that would have easily made a quick meal out of him. Pain and panic flooded all of his senses. However, the only thought in his consciousness was that he needed to escape to warn the others. It was the responsibility of a frontline surveyor to keep their teammates from dangerous situations like this, and this was why and how he obtained his vision. Anyway, that's about it for now. The only reason this video took so long for me to do is because I assumed Charlotte was gonna come out soon. But when I realized she wasn't, that's when I just popped out this video really quick for you guys. However, I'm going to continue to do this. Every time characters come out, I'll probably do like 4 at a time, and then I'll release a video explaining how they got their visions and how it aligns with Gnosticism. Or perhaps a character will come out that will break the mold, which wouldn't make sense to Gnosticism, so that's why I believe that Genshin won't do that. But even though I'm going to do like 4 at a time, if I ever take a little bit longer than expected to release, it's probably because I want to play the game, not just make a video. So give me a bit, guys. I'm more of a player than I am a YouTuber, from my point of view anyway. As well as anytime that Genshin gives us some data that needs to be explained with Gnosticism, I will explain it. But I'm not just gonna sit here and read you Gnostic gospel, because that'll be weird. So I'll only give you relevant details when it comes to Gnosticism, not just reading every word for you guys. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope to see you next time.